You mentioned Kwame Nkrumah's book in regards to clearly explaining neo-colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe Wretched of the Earth carries the same power?
Oh, yes, of course. In a different way, though. Wretched of the Earth dealt with the cultural demonization, the spiritual demonization. It touched on all because he was a doctor, see? So he knows human behavior. So that's what he focused on. This is what colonialism has done. So when Malcolm talks about the self-hatred, for example, he goes into a deeper analysis from the perspective only that a doctor can do. And then as a result of all that internalized hatred, self-destruction, what does it also create, though? It quite naturally creates the urge for violence to get rid of that oppression. And, some people were criticizing him as somebody who was, advocating or promoting violence, but it's nonsense. It's people that are not willing to accept the truth that you cannot impose that kind of barbaric conditions upon fellow human beings and then be surprised that they would want to act violently toward that violence to get rid of the violence. So in that sense, it was almost like a calling card for people that were fighting to liberate themselves from European imperialism in the 1960s. And then, of course, today, the structures of colonialism are very different now. You don't have physical, white people representing the elements of imperialism. Now you have so-called fellow Africans. So it's kind of different to think about, okay, how can I adopt that same text to now confront, these Africans who are essentially doing the same thing that the Europeans did. And to me, it's not that difficult. We should not overly focus on the, skin color. Let's focus on what they're doing, right? And discount the fact that, they're not fellow Africans, I would not want to call somebody a fellow, like a comrade, when he's essentially doing the same things that the Europeans did to exploit us, to oppress us. They're taking advantage of their black skin tone to do the same thing and benefiting themselves, enriching themselves, and the elite that are around him. And the difference between that and Nkrumah's book is that Nkrumah focuses on the practical ways to not only counter imperialism, but to how to build Africa's economy. It's like a blueprint. So it says, for example, if you want to industrialize, West Africa should focus on producing these types of manufacturers. East Africa should produce this type so that they're not competing with each other. And then West Africa can trade with East Africa. North Africa, same thing, focus on some, manufactured products. South Africa, the same thing, and you trade. And then you have all the regions trading and manufacturing. And then he says, another thing of creating a United States of Africa is that you have automatically a big market. You're not going to manufacture a car when you don't have the base to support it, but you have an entire African continent. At the time he wrote that, I don't know what the population of the African continent was, but proportionally, it was very large, of course. Today it's 1.3 billion. Can you imagine if you have 4 or 5 major car manufacturers in African countries? Why would you need to import automobiles from the United States or from Europe or from South Korea? Think about that, with a market of that size. And that's one example, a market of that size for every manufacturer that Africa is now importing from the West, from China, from other Asian countries, from all over the world. Africa imports things that could be produced in Africa. And that's why I say that is a blueprint, because it lays it out chapter by chapter by chapter. This is what we should do to build our economies. So they're addressing the same issue, but in a different way. Wretched of the Earth, the spiritual, the psychological component, to regain your confidence. So you need both, actually, because unless you regain your confidence, you will not be able to implement what Nkrumah is advocating in his book.